The escalating trade tensions between Canada and the United States have reached a critical juncture, bringing significant changes to the automotive trade landscape between our two nations.
U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order slapping a 25% tariff on imported medium and heavy-duty trucks. The new tariff is expected to hit November 1st. There is a carve-out for vehicles traded under the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement. Trucks compliant with CUSMA will only be tariffed on their non-American parts. The latest levies will not hit auto parts compliant under the North American Trade Pact for now. A 10% tariff will be placed on buses and motor coaches. Let's bring in international trade lawyer Robert Glasgow now. Robert, thanks for being here. Can you break down these tariffs for us? 25% on imported medium and heavy-duty trucks. To what extent will this affect Canada?
President Trump has signed an executive order imposing 25% tariffs on imported medium and heavy-duty trucks, set to take effect November 1st. While vehicles compliant with the CUSMA agreement receive exemptions, buses and motor coaches will face a 10% tariff. The administration justifies these measures on national security grounds under Section 232, a rationale that trade experts find particularly ironic, given the deeply integrated defense and automotive markets between our countries. The automotive industry faces an unprecedented challenge as major manufacturers reassess their North American operations. Stellantis, the global automotive giant, has announced a $13 billion investment in American facilities, while shifting Jeep Compass production from Ontario to Illinois. This represents a devastating blow to Canada's automotive manufacturing sector.
The heated Canada-U.S. trade war shows no signs of cooling down. Prime Minister Mark Carney has had his trade minister in D.C. constantly for talks. Donald Trump hasn't stopped lobbing tariffs at Canada, and the provinces are now divided on their angles of attack. Ontario is taking the tact of targeting Washington using one of their own.
The way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
This after the province was dealt a huge blow to its car manufacturing sector.
We don't need their cars.
Donald Trump has been clear. He wants Canada out of the car manufacturing business.
They make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit.
It looks as though his wishes are coming true, as the U.S.-Canada trade war has now claimed a major casualty. Global car-making giant Stellantis is investing $13 billion in America and shifting manufacturing of the Jeep Compass from Ontario to Illinois.
We will make sure that we push the company and we hold them to account.
Ottawa has promised they won't take this lying down. The Prime Minister stated, "We have further made clear that we expect Stellantis to fulfill the undertakings they have made to the workers of Brampton." Ottawa has not yet clarified what action it will take, but in a letter obtained by Global News, Industry Minister Mélanie Joly says the government will, quote, exercise all options, including legal.
The president's stance on Canadian automotive production has been unequivocal. He stated plainly that America doesn't need Canadian-made cars, signaling a fundamental shift in the cross-border manufacturing relationship that has existed for decades. Ottawa has responded with threats of legal action, with Industry Minister Mélanie Joly declaring the government will exercise all available options to protect Canadian interests. The implications extend far beyond the immediate job losses.
We've got to start reacting differently. BC, forestry, huge industry, they'll make it through. It's going to be tough, they'll make it through. Quebec, aluminum, huge industry. They'll make it through. The Americans don't have enough aluminum. They'll make it through. I'm with Lisa on this one. Automakers, the automobile manufacturing sector as a whole is so huge to the Canadian economy. If it continues like this, that will have a determining effect on all of the country. And, you know, one plant in one city, 3,000 direct jobs, 3,000 families without a livelihood potentially, but then everything else in a ripple effect, all the indirect jobs. That's one factory, and there are many. So it is a huge concern as they're negotiating right now in the United States. This has to be top of mind, but it wasn't. Lutnick was directly saying, Lisa's right, her quote is right, Lutnick is clear as a bell. They're going after the Canadian automobile industry as a whole. And I think we've got to be lucid about what that means to us. We keep talking about Trump and the effect of this. This is huge. This is the big one. Automobile is the big one. And I think that, yeah, you're right, Vashti. I mean, let's hope that there's something in the budget. But let's hope that there's not something in the budget that goes back to the old game of the government trying to pick who the winners are in a free market. That's been proven to be a huge mistake. Benzie was talking about the plants that are still on tap in Ontario for the electric vehicles. I hope that turns out to be true. But it goes back to an interview you had, Vashti, with the Chinese ambassador. Why are we still imposing 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles to please the Americans when they're doing their darndest to destroy our automobile industry? I haven't heard a convincing answer to that one yet.
Howard Lutnick, Trump's Commerce Secretary nominee, has been crystal clear about targeting the Canadian automobile industry specifically. The ripple effects from losing automotive manufacturing would impact thousands of jobs across the supply chain, from parts suppliers to logistics companies. The irony isn't lost on observers that Canada continues to impose 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles to align with American interests, even as the U.S. administration actively undermines Canada's automotive sector. The president has been remarkably consistent in his messaging about tariffs.
Tariffs are a very important tool for our defense, for our national security. If we don't have tariffs, we're not going to have national security.
We're joined now by someone who has been inside the president's mind on trade from time to time. Everett Eisenstadt was the deputy director of the U.S. National Economic Council and former deputy assistant to President Trump for international economic affairs. He's now a partner at Squire Patton Boggs. Everett Eisenstadt, it's good to see you again, sir. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure, David. Thank you for having me.
So the focus of the talks now are obviously to try to get some kind of a deal on these sectoral tariffs on steel, aluminum, and energy. Donald Trump hasn't dropped that for anybody when it's a national security tariff. What do you think Canada's chances of success are here?
Well, you're right, David. He hasn't given a complete dispensation.
He's declared that without tariffs, America won't have national security, doubling down on his protectionist rhetoric. This philosophy has garnered support from unexpected quarters, including the United Auto Workers Union leadership, who see these measures as protecting American manufacturing jobs. Understanding Trump's negotiation tactics has become crucial for Canadian officials.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to watch the president negotiate up close in a number of instances. And I think he's actually quite transparent about his negotiating style. You're seeing this where he is not afraid to take the big swings. He is not afraid to use threats. He's not afraid to use strong incentives, right? There's both a carrot and a stick approach happening here. But I think at the end of the day, he is a deal maker and he understands that for a deal to work out, there has to be something in it for both parties. But a good deal is one that makes both parties better off. So at the end of the day, in terms of negotiating between the United States and Canada, I certainly expect that whatever landing zone we ultimately do arrive at will be a better arrangement than the one that we started with.
Well, let's look to the other side of the negotiating table. Prime Minister Carney has publicly ruled out counter tariffs against the U.S. Meanwhile, his trade minister has been in Washington for talks most days since the Prime Minister's Oval Office visit. In your view, is this a good tactic?
Yeah, I think it is a marked improvement. You've actually heard even this week, the U.S. Trade Representative, Ambassador Greer, was asked about how negotiations were going with Canada, and he said that they were...
Former White House trade advisor Kellyanne Shaw describes the president as someone who isn't afraid to take big swings, employing both carrot and stick approaches in negotiations. She emphasizes that successful engagement requires a workmanlike mentality and persistent presence. The Canadian trade minister's almost daily presence in Washington since the Prime Minister's Oval Office visit demonstrates this approach, with U.S. Trade Representative Greer acknowledging that negotiations are progressing well. The economic stakes couldn't be higher. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce tracks billions in cross-border commerce, explaining why 2/3 of Canadians view securing a trade deal as crucial for jobs and economic stability. Trade experts advise Canada to broaden the negotiation scope beyond traditional trade matters, leveraging critical minerals, energy resources, and northern security cooperation as bargaining chips. The unified approach that once characterized Canada's response is showing signs of strain. The lumber sector feels ignored despite promised support, while the steel, aluminum, and fishing industries face mounting tariff pressures. Provincial premiers who initially supported the federal approach are beginning to question the strategy of accommodation without reciprocation. The contradiction between improved diplomatic relations and escalating tariffs across multiple sectors has become increasingly difficult to reconcile. Looking ahead, the future of the USMCA agreement itself appears uncertain. There's growing speculation that the administration may prefer bilateral agreements over the current trilateral framework, potentially reverting to separate deals with Canada and Mexico. Trade experts warn that Canadian retaliation could lead to a complete fracture in the relationship, fundamentally altering the economic partnership that has defined North American prosperity for generations. As negotiations continue, Canada faces difficult choices. The government must balance the immediate pressure to respond to tariffs with the long-term need to maintain access to the American market. With Trump's presidency extending for 3 more years, Canadian officials are preparing for a prolonged period of trade uncertainty, requiring both tactical flexibility and strategic patience in navigating this challenging new reality.